The day before the college entrance exam, the class beauty insisted on taking the whole class into an abandoned industrial oxygen tank to inhale oxygen and boost brainpower, claiming it would make their minds sharper during the exam. I refused to join. The class beauty's top simp slapped me across the face. "I know you're a good student, but don't be a stumbling block." Then they all crawled inside and locked the tank door shut. Not long after, sounds of banging and muffled groans came from inside. I had a bad feeling and called the rescue team to get them out. Later, when they all failed the exam, they blamed me entirely, accusing me of being jealous and saying I shouldn't have opened the door to stop them from inhaling oxygen. In the end, they tied me up with ropes, covered my face layer by layer with wet tissues, and suffocated me to death. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in front of that same rusted tank, listening to Qin Wanga still anxiously urging everyone to go inside. I kept my mouth shut, since they wanted to boost their brains. This time I'd watch them boost to their heart's content. Class monitor, aren't you coming in? Oxygen boost for the brain. Qin Wanga stood by the rusted industrial oxygen tank, tilting her head to look at me, her voice syrupy sweet, like poison coated in 3 layers of frosting. She wore that deliberately shortened school skirt, revealing a section of pale, delicate calf. Behind her, the setting sun stretched her shadow long, winding like a snake across the concrete floor of the abandoned factory. Out of 42 students in the class, 38 had already crawled inside. The tank was originally used to store industrial oxygen, at least 2.5 meters tall, lying horizontally on the ground like a giant iron coffin. Most of the white paint on the outer wall had peeled off, revealing the red rust layer underneath. Cobwebs of unknown age hung at the valve connections. The rescue team later tested it. The oxygen concentration inside was only 31%, with the remainder being nitrogen and carbon dioxide residues, along with various industrial impurity volatiles. Inhaling oxygen to boost brainpower, ridiculous. In my past life, I didn't laugh when I stood here. That day was the day before the college entrance exam, June 6th. The weather was as stuffy and hot as a steamer. Our homeroom teacher, Mr. Chen, deliberately let us out early, telling everyone to go home and rest well to adjust their state. My original plan was to go home, flip through my error notebook, double-check a few easily confused formulas, and then go to bed early, but Qin Wanga didn't give me that chance. "It's the last day, let's go one final time as a class." She stopped me after school, her eyes sparkling, her tone carrying that irresistible enthusiasm. "I've found a really great place where everyone can relax and recharge their brains." I didn't think much of it at the time. Qin Wanga had always been like that, the one organizing all the class activities, big and small, from birthday parties to holiday gatherings. She was always the most active core figure. Everyone liked her. Everyone thought she was warm, generous, and considerate, including me, until she locked me inside that tank. No, that's not right. She didn't do it herself. She didn't even need to do it herself. She only had to stand there, looking at others with those innocent eyes, and say, "What a pity, the class monitor doesn't want to join us." And countless people would charge ahead on her behalf. For example, Zhou Ci, my boyfriend at the time. "Tang Shiyu, what do you mean by this?" Zhou Ci turned back from the oxygen tank, his brows furrowed so tightly they could crush a fly. He was the study monitor of our class, consistently ranking in the top 10 of the grade, and good-looking too, with a high nose bridge and thin lips. He looked like someone who had stepped out of a shoujo manga when wearing a white shirt. We had been together for a whole year, and I thought he liked me for my independence and clarity, that he at least respected me. "Everyone's waiting for you, and you're the only one putting on airs." His tone was laced with impatience as he tapped quickly on his phone screen. "Wanga searched for ages to find this place, all for the good of the class. Don't be ungrateful." In my past life, I was indeed ungrateful. I refused to go in, saying the tank didn't look safe. An industrial oxygen tank isn't medical equipment. What if something went wrong? I even tugged at Zhou Ci's sleeve and whispered to him that this wasn't a good idea, that maybe we could go somewhere else, even just sit at a bubble tea shop. Zhou Ci shook off my hand. "Can you stop being such a killjoy?" His voice wasn't loud, but every word hit my chest like shards of ice, a dull ache. "Do you have any idea how much effort Wanga put in? She wants to treat the whole class to oxygen, and each tank costs hundreds of yuan. She's paying out of her own pocket, and you can't even give her that much face, hundreds of dollars." I only later found out that the price of that discarded oxygen tank was zero. Qin Wanga didn't spend a single cent. She just happened to know that place, happened to know the tank's door could be locked from the outside, happened to know that on the afternoon of June 6, the factory would be closed and no one would pass by, happened. There are never that many coincidences in this world. In my past life, I didn't end up going inside, not because I had foresight, but because I was hit. Joe slapped me, right in front of that tank, in front of all 38 classmates. I know you're good at studying, but don't be a stumbling block. His eyes were red, whether from anger or some other emotion, I couldn't tell. Wanga said oxygen inhalation helps the brain, so it must really work. Do you think everyone is as smart as you? Do you think everyone can easily score 650? We just want a few more points to get into a good university. Is that wrong? He had never hit me before. In the year we were together, he was always that gentle Joe, bringing me an umbrella on rainy days, warm milk before exams, sending long voice messages late at night when I couldn't sleep, his voice low and tender, like the strings of a cello. But that day, he hit me. When the slap landed on my face, the surroundings went silent for a fraction of a second, then Chin Wanga's exclamation rang out, Joe, how can you hit someone? She trotted over, cupped my face in her hands, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice choked with tears. Tang Shiyu, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault, I shouldn't have asked everyone to come. Don't be angry, you can hit me, scold me, do whatever you want. She acted too well. At that moment, I even genuinely thought she was innocent, genuinely believed Joe had only acted out of desperation. Looking at her face, streaked with tears like rain on pear blossoms, my anger inexplicably faded by half, replaced instead by a hint of guilt. Was I really being too much of a killjoy? Was I too self-centered? It's okay, you guys go ahead, I'll wait for you outside. Really? Chin Wanga blinked at me, her eyelashes still glistening with tears. Tang Shiyu, you're the best. When we come out, I'll treat you to bubble tea. She turned and walked toward the tank opening, then stopped after 2 steps to look back at me, flashing a smile so sweet it was almost perfect. That smile was like a knife. It cut, sending a chill down my spine. What happened later in my past life, I can no longer recall clearly, not because I forgot, but because it hurt too much. I only remember that after they all crawled inside, the tank door was locked. It wasn't Chin Wanga who locked it, it was Joe. He said he was afraid the wind would blow the door open and let the oxygen inside escape, wasting it. He fastened that heavy cast iron latch and even wrapped it twice with wire for extra security. Before he went in, he glanced back at me without saying a word, but I understood that look. See, you're the one who's extra. After the door closed, the abandoned factory area fell into a terrifying silence. The wind whistled through the rusted steel frames, making a low moaning sound, like some kind of deep sob. I sat on the concrete steps beside the tank, staring at my phone, idly scrolling through college entrance exam tips. About 15 minutes later, the first thud came from inside the tank, a dull sound, like a fist hitting sheet metal. Then came the second, the third, faster and faster, more and more frantic. Mixed with the thuds were muffled groans and screams, seeping through the thick tank walls, distorted and blurred, like bubbles rising from deep water. Help, someone is calling for help. My heart clenched violently. I stood up and rushed to the tank door, pushing hard against it. It wouldn't budge. The iron door was bolted from the inside, the cast iron latch as heavy as if welded shut, my fingers unable to pry it open. Joe, can you hear me? I pounded on the tank wall and shouted, open the door, open it now. The banging inside the tank grew more intense. Someone was sobbing, someone was screaming, someone was muttering incoherently. All the sounds blended together like a chorus from hell. A strange smell began to permeate the air, like rust or something burning. I called 119. The rescue team arrived quickly, and it took less than 10 minutes to break down the door. But the moment it swung open, the smell I inhaled and the sight I saw will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was the instinctive reaction of 32 human brains suffering irreversible damage from carbon dioxide poisoning, vomiting, incontinence, convulsions, spasms. The people inside lay sprawled on the floor as if crushed by something, foaming at the mouth, eyes rolled back, limbs twisted at impossible angles. The consequence of rapidly depleted oxygen in a sealed space was that carbon dioxide and industrial exhaust replaced the breathable air. Those gases bind to hemoglobin with over 200 times the affinity of oxygen, like an invisible lock, firmly cutting off the oxygen supply to every single brain. They really need to get their heads examined. 42 people went in, 38 ended up on the ground, not 41, add in Zhou Ci, and it's 41. Qin Wanji stood at the mouth of the vat, the only one still on her feet. She didn't cover her mouth and nose until the moment the door opened, stumbling as she threw herself toward the rescue workers, trembling all over from crying. She said she didn't know what had happened, said she had just felt dizzy and crouched down by the entrance, that she had been closest to the vat's mouth, so her cries for help were the ones that got heard. As she said all this, her eyes swept past me, and for an instant, I saw what was in that gaze. It wasn't fear, wasn't lingering terror, wasn't gratitude for a narrow escape. It was calculation. She was figuring out just how much fear, how much lingering terror, and how much gratitude she needed to show to convince everyone that she, too, was a victim. What was the outcome in my past life? The college entrance exam, because nearly everyone pulled from those vats was unable to take it properly, except me. On the third day after the scores were released, I ranked first in the school and third in the province. That score was high enough to let me into any university I wanted, but no one cared about that score. Everyone cared about only one thing. Those 32 children's lives were ruined, and I was the only one who got out unharmed and still aced the exams. They tied me to the old locust tree on the school playground. I recognized those faces, Zhou Ci, Qin Wanji, and the classmates I had spent hundreds of days and nights with. They wrapped hemp rope around me, layer after layer, the coarse strands cutting into my skin, burning like fire. It's that bitch. Zhou Ci gritted her teeth as she glared at me. Qin Wanji handed over a stack of tissues, not for anyone to wipe tears from. Zhou Ci took them, soaked each one in a bucket of water, and then pressed them one by one onto my face. The sensation of a wet wipe pressed against my mouth and nose felt like being pushed headfirst into deep water. Layer after layer of air was sealed off. I could feel the fibers of the paper clinging to my lips and nostrils, damp and cool at first, then growing hotter, stuffier, increasingly insufficient for breathing. I struggled desperately, the rope cutting into the flesh of my wrists, blood trickling down my arms, but no one stopped, no one even looked at me. They cried, cursed, and comforted one another in front of me, like a warm, mutually supportive family of victims, and I was the common sinner of that family. When the last sheet of tissue fell, I heard the final sound. It was Qin Wanga's crying, no, she was crying over this perfect finale. Everyone thought she cried out of pain, but only I knew she cried out of joy. She hated every single person in this class, hated them for their good grades, for their intelligence, for always effortlessly achieving scores she desperately fought for but couldn't reach. In her senior year of high school, she was diagnosed with moderate depression, but no one took it seriously. Everyone thought she was just being overly dramatic. She once wrote in her diary, "If I can't get into a good university, then I don't want anyone else to either." In her past life, she got her wish. The futures of 32 people were shattered by her, 32 families torn apart by her, and she, with the dual support of heart disease and depression, didn't even have to serve time in prison. I was suffocated under that old locust tree. No one found me, no one investigated, no one spoke up for me, because everyone who might have spoken for me had already been destroyed by Qin Wanga, or destroyed themselves. It was in that suffocating darkness that I reopened my eyes. The sunlight stung my eyes, making me squint. The air was thick with the smell of rust and dust. The scene before me was exactly the same as in my memory: an abandoned factory, rusty iron frames, gray concrete ground, and a huge white oxygen tank lying horizontally on the ground. Most of the white paint on the tank's outer wall had peeled off, and cobwebs hung at the valve interface. A girl stood at the tank's opening, wearing a modified short-sleeved school uniform, tilting her head, her voice sweet as if coated in poison. "Class monitor, aren't you coming in? Inhale oxygen to boost your brain." Qin Wanga, her eyes curved with a smile, her eyelashes fluttering. The setting sun behind her stretched her shadow long, winding like a snake across the concrete floor. I glanced at the date on my phone screen, June 6th, 4:17 p.m., the day before the college entrance exam. It had been since the last time I died under this old locust tree. No, since the last time I was suffocated to death. Exactly. I didn't even know how long it had been. My heart is still beating, my lungs are still breathing, and the phantom pain of the rope cutting into my wrist still lingers, but those pains no longer matter. What matters is that the 41 people standing before me now are all intact and full of life. Each of them still has their brain intact, every nerve still transmitting signals correctly. They have no idea what they are about to miss. No, they are about to miss everything, Tang Shiyu. Zhou Ci walked over from behind and casually placed his hand on my shoulder, his tone warm yet slightly urging. Wang A really put a lot of thought into this, just come along with me. His palm was warm. In my past life, this same hand had pushed me away. In this life, I won't give him any chance to do that again. Sure, I said, laughing, my voice coming out so quickly that even I was surprised. Those who go in first can order some milk tea for everyone. I'll wait outside for the delivery. You guys can come out and drink it after you're done with the breathing session. Perfect. A flicker of barely perceptible surprise flashed in Qin Wanga's eyes. In my past life, I had refused, but in this life, I was smiling. She quickly adjusted her expression, flashing an even brighter smile. Tang Shiyu, you're the best, but are you sure you don't want to come in? The air in there is really good. I've tested it myself. The oxygen concentration is especially high. One breath and you'll feel completely refreshed. She tested it. Yes, she really did. Tested the seal, tested the blockage of the vents. Tested how long it would take for carbon dioxide to damage the brains of 41 people at once. I'm not going in. I shook my head with a smile, my tone as sincere as if I were blessing an old friend. I have a bit of claustrophobia, and I'm afraid of the dark. You all enjoy yourselves. I promise to call you the moment the milk tea arrives. Claustrophobia, afraid of the dark. I was indeed afraid of the dark in my past life. And I still am in this one, but standing before this rust-covered tank. What I felt wasn't fear, but a calmness bordering on reverence. Qin Wanga stared at me for 2 seconds, then suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Tang Shiyu, come with us. Her voice shifted abruptly, from sweet to a plea so weak it was almost pathetic, the rims of her eyes turning faintly red. This is our class's last group activity. Tomorrow is the college entrance exam, and after that, we'll all go our separate ways. I don't want you to be alone out here. I want to be with you, just like when we sat together during self-study. Okay. Her fingers tightened, her nails digging into the skin of my forearm, not hard, but firm. She was afraid, not that I wouldn't go in, but that I would stay outside. The events of my past life were repeating themselves. I had to be inside for her script to play out. Only with me inside could she ensure no one called for help early, that everyone was trapped until the very last moment. She could pretend to faint, crouch by the door, and at the final moment, position herself as the safest person. But if I were outside, if I were conscious, if I could make a call, then I would become a variable. Zhou Ci spoke again, this time with a layer of inexplicable agitation in his tone. Just go in. Wang Gu has begged you like this, and you're still putting on airs. His eyelid twitched when he said, putting on airs. In my past life, he had said, don't be ungrateful. But this time he changed his phrasing. The essence, however, remained the same. He was speaking for Qin Wangu, using a tone that seemed to defend me while actually pressuring me to yield for someone else. I looked at him and suddenly felt like laughing. How had I fallen for this person in my past life? Was it because he once spoke up for me in class? Because he secretly passed me an eraser during an exam? Because he was good-looking, had a nice voice, and his smile made my heart race? No. It was because I liked him, so I mistook every normal social gesture for special affection. He had never loved me. He loved the attention and validation that Qin Wangu held in her palm and could withdraw at any time. All his defenses of Qin Wangu were merely defenses of the version of himself that she needed, and I was just someone very suitable to be a girlfriend. Good grades, decent looks, gentle personality, no trouble, presentable in public, hassle-free in private, and occasionally useful as an excuse to reject Qin Wangu's ambiguous requests while savoring the perfectly measured disappointment she showed because he had a girlfriend. The perfect tool. All right, I'll go in, I sighed, putting on a show of compromise, but I'm staying by the entrance. I'm afraid of the dark. I walked toward the mouth of the tank. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Behind me came the cheers and jeers of my classmates. Someone shouted, the class monitor finally gets it. Someone else yelled, Wanga was right. Oxygen really does boost brain power. There was laughter, noise, and the jostling of people pushing forward. Qin Wanga walked half a step ahead of me, her steps as light as if she were dancing, her skirt lifting slightly in the breeze. She glanced back at me, a peculiar satisfaction in her eyes. What was she thinking? Probably something like, the plan is going smoothly. I paused when I reached the mouth of the tank. From this angle, I could vaguely make out the inside. It was deeper, darker, and damper than I had imagined. The floor was covered with some kind of anti-slip mat, now moldy and blackened, giving off a musty smell. Deep inside the tank were several small circular vents, about 2 or 3 centimeters in diameter, so narrow that even a finger couldn't fit through. Those vents were blocked, I didn't know by whom, perhaps by years of accumulated dust and rust, or perhaps by something Qin Wanga had done in advance, but those tiny holes, in a sealed space where 41 people breathed at once, would become the deadliest trap. The oxygen would run out far faster than anyone could imagine. Tang Shiyu, come in quickly. Qin Wanga stood inside the jar, waving at me. The beam of her flashlight shone out from within, casting her face half in brightness and half in shadow, like a meticulously designed light and shadow installation. I didn't move. I pretended to be looking at my phone, then suddenly looked up, revealing a frustrated expression. Ah, the bubble tea place is calling. I held up my phone to show her. There was indeed an order interface from a food delivery app on the screen, except that order was one I had just placed 3 seconds ago. The delivery address was set to the factory's main gate, and the bubble tea shop was at least a 40-minute drive away. I'll go grab it at the entrance first. You guys start inhaling, I'll be right back. Qin Wanga's smile froze for a fraction of a second, just a fraction, but I saw it. In that split second, what flickered through her eyes? Was it anger, fear, a primal, instinctive bloodlust of a predator whose prey had slipped from the trap? But she quickly smiled. Sure, then hurry back. Okay. She tilted her head, her voice syrupy sweet. We'll wait for you to come back and inhale together. When she said, inhale together, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, a joke that only she understood. I turned and walked toward the factory gate, not fast, but without looking back. The tank door behind me let out a dull thud when I was about 20 meters away, the sound of the cast iron bolt being locked into place. Then came Zhou Si's voice, muffled and distant through the tank wall. Wanga, step inside. I'm closing the door so the wind doesn't blow it open. The wind, it was June, and the wind was strong enough to blow open a several 100-pound iron door. I walked along the factory's concrete road, and the world behind me was changing, quietly, slowly, irreversibly. I didn't know when they would discover the vents were blocked, when they would start feeling dizzy, when someone would begin screaming, when everyone would start screaming, but I knew one thing. This time, I wouldn't call 119, at least not so soon. I walked out of the factory gate, bought a bottle of cola from the convenience store across the street, pulled out my phone, opened a virtual number app one had never used before, generated a new number, and dialed 119. Hello, this is the Fire Rescue Center. How can I help you? Hello. I'd like to report a suspected carbon monoxide poisoning incident. My voice was eerily calm, nothing like an 18-year-old girl who had just been reborn. The location is the abandoned chemical plant area in the north of the city. There's a discarded industrial oxygen tank with over 40 people trapped inside. The tank's seal might be compromised. I smelled something strange when I passed by and heard people inside shouting for help. May I have your name and contact information? Just a passerby. I said those 3 words and hung up. Then I turned off my phone, snapped the SIM card in half, and tossed it into the trash can by the roadside. I sat down on a plastic chair outside the convenience store, opened an iced cola, and took a big gulp. The bubbles burst on my tongue, sweet to the point of bitterness. The factory across the street was as silent as a grave. Inside, people were slowly losing consciousness, some using their last bit of strength to pound against the iron walls, others crying, praying, thinking of their mothers, and Qin Wanga was probably crouching near the tank's opening, covering her mouth and nose, calculating how much longer she could hold out. She thought everyone would fall unconscious, that she would be the last one awake, that when rescue arrived, she would appear as a victim who had tried her best to save everyone but was powerless. But this time, no rescue would come quickly. The emergency call made from that virtual number would be diverted to a non-urgent line, and the operator would treat it as an ordinary social assistance request rather than a life-or-death emergency. By the time they confirmed the situation was real, by the time they dispatched enough rescue forces, by the time they broke through that heavy iron door, there would be enough time for those neurons in the brain to snap, one by one, completely, permanently. I finished the last sip of cola, tossed the bottle into the recycling bin, then stood up and brushed off the non-existent dust from my skirt. In the distance, the faint wail of an ambulance grew closer, more piercing. I looked at the road leading to the factory, and the corners of my mouth slowly curled into a smile. Class beauty, this oxygen-boosting brain tonic you've treated us to, the whole class will savor it well. The sound of the ambulance came from afar, like some ancient siren, tearing through the dusk air with each wail. I didn't move. The plastic chair outside the convenience store was scorching hot from the sun, but I sat steady, like someone who had been waiting for a long time and didn't mind waiting even longer. The phone in my pocket was as silent as death. The SIM card I had snapped in half lay in a roadside trash can, keeping company with a half-eaten rice ball wrapper. No one could find me, at least not for now. The first ambulance stopped at the factory gate, followed by a second and a third. Red and blue lights flickered in rapid succession against the gray-white cement wall. Like some silent Morse code, someone was shouting for breaching tools, someone for oxygen tanks, someone for backup, and I sat across the street, watching it all through the dust-covered glass door of a convenience store, as if watching a movie that had nothing to do with me. But I knew, I had written the script for this movie myself, in my past life. The rescue team arrived very quickly, so quickly that Qin Wanga didn't even have time to show enough pain, so quickly that those brains, not yet completely dead, were saved. 32 people, every single one alive, every single one rotting, half dead, more agonizing than death itself. But this life was different. I had calculated the time. The emergency call from that virtual number would be classified as a level 3 response, requiring at least 40 minutes for information verification and resource dispatch, and the factory was in a remote location. The nearest fire station would take at least 20 minutes to arrive. By the time they actually started breaching the tank door, it would be at least an hour later. An hour, long enough for carbon monoxide to complete 200 bindings in a person's blood, long enough for the cerebral cortex to let out its final cry in hypoxia, long enough for those once brilliant minds to turn into nothing but breathing flesh. I looked down at the time on my phone. 5:12, 55 minutes had passed since they went in. The tank should have gone quiet by now. In my past life, there were still people making sounds inside at the 15th minute. By the 20th minute, only faint groans remained. By the 30th minute, even the groans were gone, leaving only the occasional sound of unconscious limbs hitting the iron walls, like the final struggle of a drowning person before sinking to the bottom. But in this life, they lasted 55 minutes, 40 minutes longer than before. Impressive. I silently applauded them in my heart, and I meant it sincerely. Little girl, why are you sitting here all alone? The convenience store owner poked her head out. A round-faced woman in her 50s, speaking with a thick local accent. What's going on over there? So many ambulances have arrived. I don't know. I shook my head, my expression innocent and confused. Maybe there was an accident at the factory. Then don't stay here, go home quickly, the landlady said with concern. Aren't you taking the college entrance exam tomorrow? Your parents must be worried. The college entrance exam. Those two words coming from the landlady's mouth felt like a dull knife slowly cutting through the thin shell around my heart. Yes, the college entrance exam. In my past life, I ranked third in the entire province. That score hung behind my name like a gleaming medal, yet no one could see it. Everyone kept asking me, why didn't you watch over them? Why did you let them in? Why didn't you die in their place? I looked down at my open palms, long fingers, distinct knuckles, neatly trimmed nails. In my past life, these hands had been bound with hemp rope, leaving deep bloody marks. In this life, they were clean, untouched by anything. But these very hands had just pressed the countdown to death for 41 people. No, not death. Something worse than death. I closed my eyes. Memories of my past life surged like a tide, flooding my nostrils, filling my lungs, layer after layer of wet tissues, cool at first, then growing warm, stifling, suffocating. They cried above my head, cursed beneath my feet, condemned me from all sides. And beneath the last layer of that tissue, the final sound I heard was Qin Wanga's sobbing. That sound, I will never forget in this lifetime. I opened my eyes, my gaze passing through the glass door of the convenience store and landing on the chaotic lights at the entrance of the factory across the street. Stretchers were being carried out from deep inside the factory one after another. The human-like shapes lying on them were covered from head to toe with white sheets, no faces visible, no expressions to be seen, only the faint outlines of bodies beneath the sheets. Like human-shaped parcels. When the first stretcher passed through my line of sight, I silently whispered a name in my mind. Lin Siki. The girl who sat in the row in front of me, always wore her hair in a ponytail with a pink barrette at the end, excelled in math, and had 2 dimples when she smiled. She was smiling when she went in, because she thought Qin Wanga was her best friend. The second stretcher, Chen Haoran, the Chinese class representative, with beautiful handwriting in pen Dreaming of being admitted to the Chinese department at Peking University. The third, Su Zi, introverted and not very talkative, but always ranked in the top 50 of her grade. Her mother had cancer, and her greatest wish was to see her daughter get into a good university. The fourth, Xiao Yuxuan, captain of the basketball team, the tallest, the first to squeeze into the canister and the easiest to be crushed at the innermost part. The fifth, Sun Xiaoming. The sixth, Lu Ziang. The seventh, Wang Yifan. The eighth, Li Xijia. I kept counting until I reached the 39th before stopping. 39 stretchers. I counted the stretchers carried out from the factory gate. Only 39 bodies. What does that mean? It means 2 people were not brought out. In my mind, I quickly calculated all the possibilities, and then a thought struck me. My heart jolted violently. 2 people remained inside the canister without being taken out. Either they no longer needed to be brought out, pronounced dead on the spot, or they were still left inside. By the time the last stretcher was loaded onto the ambulance, the sky had completely darkened. The streetlights flickered on at exactly 6:45, casting an orange glow across the road like a layer of expired syrup spilled on the ground. I stood up, left the convenience store entrance, walked a short distance along the roadside, found a roadside tree, and leaned against its trunk. From here, I could see the full view of the factory gate without being noticed by anyone. The fire truck had also arrived, its red body reflecting a dull luster under the streetlights. Several people in orange protective suits emerged from deep within the factory, talking among themselves as they walked. One of them gestured broadly, as if describing something they had never encountered before. I caught a word, deceased. My heart skipped a beat again, this time heavier. Someone had died. Not everyone was lucky enough. Not everyone was lucky enough to become a half-dead vegetable. Some people didn't even get the chance to become a vegetable. They were taken directly by God. I closed my eyes, afraid to think about who that person might be, but I quickly opened them again, because another question came to mind. Qin Wanga, where was she? She should be inside, should be closest to the tank opening, should be covering her mouth and nose, should be pretending to be unconscious, should be using the least amount of breath to last the longest time, should be the first one rescued when help arrived, should be able to speak, should be able to cry and tell everyone. I was so scared. They all passed out. I couldn't pull them out. I'm so useless. That was her script. In her past life, she played it flawlessly, but in this life, I tore up her script, because the rescue came too late, so late that her script of being conveniently close to the tank opening might turn into another kind of convenience. Dying conveniently at the spot closest to the exit. I opened my eyes, staring at the entrance of the factory gate. About 10 more minutes passed before 2 firefighters walked out carrying a stretcher. The white sheet on the stretcher didn't cover the head, revealing a length of jet black hair and a pale face. It was Qin Wanga. She was alive. Her eyes were open, her lips slightly trembling, as if she was saying something. The 2 firefighters carried her quickly, so quickly that her hair hung down from the stretcher, swaying in the wind like the only black flame against the white sheet. She was alive. I suddenly realized my hands were trembling, not from fear, but from rage. She was alive in my past life, and now she was alive again. 41 people went in, 2 died, and who knows how many of the remaining 39 would end up as vegetables, how many would suffer brain damage, how many would spend the rest of their lives in wheelchairs, drooling, unable to utter a single complete sentence. And her, Qin Wanga, was still alive. Why her? My nails dug into my palms, and the pain brought me a moment of clarity. No, it's better that she's alive. Death would be too easy on her. I want everyone to know the truth about that canister. I want everyone to see her heart, more toxic than carbon monoxide. I want her to confess, with her own mouth, why she did this. But before that, there was one more thing. Zhou Ci. I had been waiting for news about him. He should have been in that tank too, among those 39 stretchers. But when I counted the stretchers, I didn't see his face. I didn't know if he was dead or alive, or if he had been left behind in the tank and never came out. I decided to go to the hospital, but not right now. It was too early to go now. Everyone was still in the midst of rescue efforts, caught up in chaos. No one would notice a girl in a school uniform walking through the hospital corridors, but what I wanted wasn't to be noticed, it was to be seen. Being seen meant being remembered, and being remembered meant that in the storm to come, my existence would take on some meaning, and that meaning, in my past life, was sinner. In this life, it had to be witness. I hailed a taxi by the roadside and gave the driver the address of the city's first people's hospital. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, probably startled by my school uniform and the expression on my face. Without saying much, he silently started the car. Outside the window, the city's nightscape rushed backward. Neon lights, billboards, streetlights, headlights. All the lights blurred into a streak in my pupils, as if time was accelerating. "Little girl, are you going to the hospital to see a classmate?" the driver finally couldn't help but ask, his voice cautious. "I just heard on the radio that it's students from your school." "Yeah, oh dear, with the college entrance exam coming up, something like this happens." The driver sighed and muttered on. I stopped listening. My attention was entirely on the hospital building growing closer outside the window. That white structure in the night, like a giant box, filled with broken brains being fought for. The car stopped at the hospital entrance. I paid, pushed open the door, and the night air hit me, carrying the smell of disinfectant. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The hospital's emergency hall was brightly lit, as if it had been bombed. Nurses running everywhere, stretchers being pushed back and forth, medical alarms sounding in waves. The air was thick with the smell of blood and some indescribable chemical agent. The plastic chairs in the hallway were packed with people, some crying, some staring blankly, some on the phone, others covering their mouths, afraid to make a sound. All parents, their children were inside, in those resuscitation rooms with curtains drawn, under those beeping instruments, among those white sheets and 4 lines. They sat here, unable to do anything, only waiting. When I walked into the emergency hall, no one noticed me. I was wearing a plain white short-sleeved shirt and dark blue pants, my hair casually tied back in a ponytail, with no makeup on my face. I looked just like any student visiting a classmate at the hospital. I stood in front of the vending machine for a moment, bought a bottle of water, and then sat down on a chair at the end of the hallway. From this angle, I could see the door to resuscitation room No. 3, the door that saw the most nurses coming and going, and where medical equipment was wheeled in and out most frequently, indicating that the person inside was in the most critical condition. I was waiting for one more piece of news. Once that news arrived, my witness mission for today would be complete. About 20 minutes later, the door to resuscitation room No. 3 was flung open, and a nurse rushed out, shouting down the hallway, "Who is Zhou Ci's family? Is Zhou Ci's family here?" I stood up, but instead of walking toward the nurse, I headed for the water dispenser at the other end of the hallway. While filling my cup, I overheard the nurse talking to someone else. Zhou Ci, male, 18 years old, his blood oxygen saturation once dropped to 60%, we're putting him on a ventilator now, but the situation is not optimistic. We need a family member to sign the consent form. I'm his mother. A woman's voice rang out, sharp and trembling. I'm his mother. What's wrong with my son? What happened to him? He's supposed to take the college entrance exam tomorrow. He's supposed to get into Tsinghua. Zhou Ci's mother. I've seen that face before. In my past life, I saw anger on that face, hatred, and utter collapse, but in this life, all I saw on that face was fear, pure, primal, the deepest fear of a mother. Her son was lying inside, and he might never wake up again. I walked past her with a water cup in my hand, my steps unbroken. She didn't look at me. She couldn't see anyone now. Her entire focus was on that door, the one with 3 words on it, emergency room. I reached the corner of the hallway, set the water cup on the windowsill, then leaned against the wall, tilting my head back to look at the fluorescent light on the ceiling. It hummed with a low buzz, the white light stinging my eyes. Zhou Ci, my boyfriend. We'd been together for a year, holding hands through every corner of the campus, sneaking notes in the back row of the classroom, watching sunsets together on the rooftop, listening to his low voice recite a poem over late-night phone calls. Then he slapped me, then he locked that door, and then, before he went in, he glanced at me, his eyes filled with a single sentence, "See, you're the one who's extra." I remember the feel of that slap. His palm wasn't large but it was strong, landing on my left cheek with a crisp sound. The air around us froze in that moment, and everyone was staring at us, and on Qin Wanga's face, there was a fleeting, undeniable look of satisfaction. She had finally done it, making Zhou Ci hit me for her sake. After that slap, everything changed. Not our relationship, but how I saw him. I finally saw one thing clearly. In his heart, every word Qin Wanga said was more important than my safety, and every expression she made mattered more than my feelings. I was just a tool to prove Zhou Ci was a good boyfriend, a tool to show Qin Wanga, "Look, I have a girlfriend, I'm so charming, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, then I heard a voice from the end of the hallway, a voice I hadn't expected. It was Qin Wanga's voice. Tang Shiyu, Tang Shiyu. She was calling my name. I opened my eyes and looked in the direction of the voice. Qin Wanga was being pushed into the emergency hall through another entrance in a wheelchair. Her face was as pale as paper, her hair disheveled and falling loosely over her shoulders, and her school uniform was stained with dust and some dark-colored grime. Her eyes anxiously searched through the crowd. The moment she saw me, they lit up, like a drowning person grabbing the last piece of driftwood. Tang Shiyu. Her voice was choked with tears, and the tears nearly burst out instantly. Are you okay? I'm so scared, I'm really so scared. I didn't know it would turn out like this, I really didn't know. The wheelchair stopped in front of me. She reached out and grabbed my wrist with astonishing strength. I looked down at her hand gripping me, long, slender fingers, nails painted with a light pink polish, a thin red string tied around her wrist with a small gold bead strung on it. In my past life, this very hand had covered her mouth and nose as she crouched by the tank opening waiting for rescue. In this life, she used this same hand to grab me, trying to make me her first witness. Look at me, I'm just like you, I'm a victim too, I'm scared, I cried. I even looked for my friend Tang Shiyu first. How innocent am I, how kind, how deserving of sympathy. I looked at her, slowly curving the corners of my mouth. Wanga, my voice was so soft that only she could hear it. Didn't you cover your mouth and nose? Her tears stopped for a moment, just a moment, then she cried even harder, sobbing so violently that she couldn't catch her breath, sliding off the wheelchair to kneel on the ground and wrap her arms around my legs. Her cries drew the attention of everyone around. The parents, nurses, and security guards all turned their eyes toward us. Tang Shiyu, I was so scared, I thought I was going to die, I thought everyone was going to die. Her voice was so loud that the entire hallway could hear it, so loud that every word would be remembered by everyone present. She was performing, and I was her stage prop. I crouched down, reached out to lift her face, and wiped away the tears on her cheeks with my thumb, moving slowly and gently, as if comforting a frightened child. Her eyes reflected my face. In those moist, innocent, carefully crafted eyes, my expression was warm and caring, just like a good friend should be, but the words I spoke could only be heard by her. 39 people were sent to the hospital. 2 died on the spot. Qin Wanji, you're the only one who walked out of that tank standing. Her body went rigid, truly frozen, as if struck by lightning, her breath pausing for half a second, then she shoved me violently, collapsed onto the ground, staring at me with an incredulous look, her lips moving as if she wanted to say something but couldn't get the words out. The parents around us started murmuring among themselves, some asking, who is that little girl? Others saying, she must be a victim, so pitiful. Some sighed, some wiped away tears. I stood up, dusted off my knees, though there was no dust there, and looked down at Qin Wanji sitting on the floor. At the end of the corridor, in the emergency room, an instrument let out a piercing alarm. Someone shouted, prepare the defibrillator. Someone was crying, someone was calling out a name. I turned around and walked away without looking back. Behind me, Qin Wanji's voice chased after me, sharp and broken, Tang Shiyu, come back, you can't leave, you, wait for me. I did not look back. The corridor was very long, with fluorescent lights flickering on one after another, stretching my shadow long and pale. Tomorrow is the college entrance exam, but tonight I have something more important to do. I walked to the steps outside the hospital entrance. The night wind hit me head-on, carrying the sticky heat and humidity unique to early June. A few stars flickered faintly behind the clouds on the distant horizon, like silent eyes watching everything unfolding in this city. I took out my phone, opened the memo, and began to type word by word. I would write down everything, the jar, the door bolt, the ventilation shaft, the time of the emergency call, Qin Wanga's position inside the jar, every word she had said, every inappropriate expression on her face, the angle of her smile when she turned back to look at me just before the jar's door closed, every single detail, because tomorrow, when those parents snap out of their initial shock and grief, they will need an answer. They will ask, why did my child go in? Why didn't anyone stop them? Why did it have to be your child who came back alive? They will need a target. In my past life, I was that target. In this life, I will personally tie that target onto Qin Wanga. When I had typed about 2,000 words, I heard a clatter of footsteps behind me. Someone was running out of the hospital. Not just one person, but a crowd. Their footsteps were heavy and chaotic, mixed with crying and shouting, like a small storm gathering and surging toward me. "It's him," a woman's voice, sharp as a knife, cut through the entire night sky. "It's that girl." He was outside. He knew something was wrong inside and didn't even call the police. I turned around and saw a group of people rushing out of the hospital entrance. Leading them was a middle-aged woman in a dark dress, Zhao Yuxuan's mother. Her eyes were bloodshot red, and her lips trembled violently with rage. Behind her followed at least 20 people, each wearing the same expression on their faces, hatred. My heart skipped a beat, and my fingers instinctively tightened, gripping the old phone, but in the next second, I smiled, because I recognized the woman at the front, Zhao Yuxuan's mother. Zhao Yuxuan, the basketball team captain, 6'3", built like an ox. He was the first one in and the last one out. He was pronounced dead on the spot, with no vital signs left inside the tank. His body was too large, curled up at the very bottom of the tank. It took the firefighters 20 minutes to drag him out from under the crowd. Zhao Yuxuan's mother was now charging toward me, her tears, blown to the sides of her face by the wind as she ran, left dark streaks. She knew who I was, a member of the parent committee, having seen me countless times at school, even once telling me, "This child is so sensible, if only our Yuxuan were half as worry-free as you." Now, she was going to tear me apart. "Why did you kill my son?" She rushed up to me, grabbed my collar, and with incredible strength lifted me off the ground, my feet almost dangling in the air. "Why didn't you call the police? Why did you just watch them die?" People surged around me, boxing me in, phones, flashlights, camera flashes, a blinding glare from every direction. Some were filming, some were shouting, "Beat her," others were crying or screaming. Zhao Yuxuan's mother shoved me, and my body slammed against the sharp edge of the steps, the pain making everything go dark. But I didn't fight back. I didn't even scream, because this was exactly what I had been waiting for. I had been waiting for this moment, when everyone needed a scapegoat, when all the hatred needed an outlet, when the door to the truth needed a key. I wanted everyone to hear what I was about to say. "Auntie," I began, my voice not loud but steady, so steady it surprised even myself. "I didn't call the police. Not because I didn't want to, but because..." Zhao Yuxuan's mother loosened her grip on my neck slightly. "Why?" "Because Qin Wanga wouldn't let me call the police." The moment those words hit the ground, all the sounds around us vanished. Silence, a deathly silence. Then, like a beehive that had been poked, everyone erupted at once. "What do you mean? Are you saying Wanga caused this? Wasn't she inside too? She almost died. Don't you dare slander her here. Wanga is such a good person. What bad intentions could she possibly have?" "Exactly, you didn't call the police yourself, and now you're blaming others. Have you no shame?" Listening to these voices, the corners of my mouth slowly curled into a smile. Such a good person. Yes, Qin Wanga is such a good person. How good? Good enough to make an entire class willingly crawl into an abandoned industrial oxygen tank. Good enough to freeze 32 minds forever at the age of 18. Good enough to play the innocent victim in a disaster she herself orchestrated. Good enough to make everyone refuse to believe she could ever hurt anyone. What a good person. If you don't believe me, take a look at this. I raised the old phone in my hand. The screen displayed the more than 2,000 words I had just typed. Every word described everything that happened that afternoon, from when Qin Wanga suggested going for oxygen, to when she insisted everyone go inside, to when she grabbed my hand as I refused to enter, saying she was afraid to be alone, to the smile she gave me as she looked back before the chamber door closed. These are just my statements. The real evidence is inside that chamber. What evidence? Someone asked. The vents inside the chamber were all blocked. You can ask the firefighters. The things blocking those vents were stuffed in deliberately, not naturally accumulated dust. Another silence fell. This one lasted longer than the last, long enough for me to hear everyone's breathing, long enough for me to sense something quietly shifting in the air, like a seed sprouting underground, silent at first, but given enough time and water, it would eventually break through the soil and overturn the entire earth. I didn't wait for them to break the silence. Instead, I continued, "There's one more thing. Qin Wanga was fully conscious the entire time she was in the tank. You can check the rescue footage. When the tank door opened, she was the only one still standing. She stood in that concentration of toxic gas for an entire hour while everyone else had already lost consciousness. Don't you find that strange?" Zhao Yuxuan's mother let go of my collar and took a step back. looking at me with a completely new expression, no longer anger and hatred, but confusion, shock, and a faint, awakening doubt. "How do you know she wasn't unconscious?" someone questioned. "Weren't you outside?" "Because she spoke to me when she came out." I can't repeat what she said here, but I can hand over the recording to the police. The recording? I don't have a recording, but no one knows I don't have one. In this information age where truth and falsehood are hard to distinguish, the phrase, "I have evidence," itself is a weapon. It doesn't require you to actually have it, only that the other party believes you do. Xiao Yuxuan's mother's lips moved, as if she wanted to say something but ultimately said nothing. She turned around and looked at the group of parents, as angry and confused as she was, as if waiting for someone to tell her who exactly she should hate. I straightened my clothes, which had been pulled and wrinkled, and took a deep breath. Tomorrow I'll go to the police station to give a statement and tell the police everything I know. If I say a single false word, I'll write my name backward, but right now, I'm asking you all for one thing. Everyone stared at me. Don't confront Qin Wanga, because her family is already outside. If you go to her now, her family will call the police and accuse you of harassment, and then you'll be in the wrong even if you're in the right. This is the truth. Just now when I was in the hospital, I did see Qin Wanga's mother at the other end of the hallway. She was wearing a black dress, her hair meticulously combed, with that carefully rehearsed anxious expression on her face. She immediately found the reporters and, facing the camera, sobbed uncontrollably. "My daughter has a heart condition. She almost didn't make it. She almost didn't make it." As if she really had almost died. The parents exchanged glances, and some began whispering among themselves. Their anger was still there, but it was starting to shift from the initial, "Beat this bitch to death," to, "Let's go check that vent," to, "Maybe we should ask the fire department what they say first." The change was slow, but it was indeed happening, like an undercurrent beneath the ice, invisible yet constantly flowing, steadily gathering strength, until one day it will shatter the entire frozen surface. I turned and walked down the steps, heading along the hospital's sidewalk toward the bus stop. After taking about a dozen steps, a voice came from behind me. "Tang Shiyu." I stopped in my tracks but didn't turn around. It was Xiao Yuxuan's mother. Her voice was no longer as sharp as before, now hoarse and exhausted, like a drowning person using the last of their strength to muster all their courage and ask one final question. "Did you really not call the police?" I stood there, the street lamp's light spilling down from above, casting my shadow at my feet like a small, tranquil lake. "I didn't call the police," I said, and that was the truth. I didn't call the police. I used a virtual number and a temporary SIM card, with no record to trace the call back to me. I wasn't even sure that call had been taken seriously, but I made another call. This one, I placed to the provincial news hotline, not to report a crime, but to tip them off. I even had a headline ready for them. A senior high school girl organized her classmates to inhale oxygen for brain boost, resulting in one dead and one disabled. The shocking truth behind it all, they should be editing it overnight by now. I looked up at the city skyline in the distance, brightly lit, like a volcano that would never go out. Tomorrow, that volcano would erupt, and I would stand at its mouth, watching everything turn to ashes. I didn't go home. That place called home had stopped accepting me in my past life once everything had settled. My parents were teachers, so honest and upright that they didn't know how to defend their daughter when faced with overwhelming accusations. They tried to apologize on my behalf, tried to kneel before those parents, tried to humble themselves to the dust, begging for them to let me go, but they didn't succeed. In the final days of my past life, my mother lost 20 pounds, half her hair turned white, and every night she sat in the living room clutching a string of Buddhist prayer beads, murmuring under her breath. She was praying for the Bodhisattva to protect me, but the Bodhisattva was probably too busy to hear her voice. Tonight, in this life, I didn't want them to be dragged into this storm ahead of time. I checked into a budget hotel near the hospital, paying in cash. The receptionist, a young girl, glanced at me, probably finding it odd for a student in a school uniform to check in alone, but she didn't ask further. The hotel was close to the hospital, and it wasn't unusual for patients' family members to stay here, even in school uniforms. My room was on the 6th floor, with the window facing the hospital. After showering, I changed into the hotel's white bathrobe, sat by the bed, and pulled the curtain open just a crack. The hospital building in the distance was brightly lit, with crowds still bustling at several entrances. Those stretchers, those ambulances, those red and blue flashing lights, like a never-ending nightmare. The phone vibrated. a notification from the old phone after connecting to the hotel's Wi-Fi. The provincial news had already been released, with a headline exactly as I had anticipated. High school girl organizes class oxygen inhalation brain boost, resulting in 2 deaths and dozens in critical condition. I clicked on the video, a report less than 3 minutes long. The footage showed the reporter standing at the factory entrance, with the ambulance still lit in the background. The scene cut to Chin Wanga's mother. She was trembling as she wept, her voice breaking intermittently. Our Wanga is also a victim. She has a weak heart. She didn't know this would happen. Then came Chin Wanga's face. A photo of her lying on a hospital bed, her profile visible, eyes closed, hair spread across the white pillow, lips pale, looking as fragile as a porcelain doll. The photo was provided by a kind-hearted person. The angle perfectly avoided capturing any expression on her face, leaving only a standard victim silhouette that anyone could project onto. I stared at that photo for a long time. She was smiling, not a genuine smile, but one that used the smallest muscle groups to display the most expected expression, the corners of her mouth slightly drooping, her brows gently furrowed, her eyelids closed at just the right angle, neither the complete relaxation of sleep nor a spasmodic tightness, but a subtle state of, I'm trying to stay calm, but I'm enduring immense pain inside. She had performed in front of the camera countless times, each time precisely evoking the thought of, how pitiful, in those who saw her, but this time, she had miscalculated one thing. In the comments section below this news story, the top comment read, I was there. This girl was standing when she came out of the tank, 40 minutes, everyone else was unconscious, and she was the only one standing. Don't you find that strange? The number of likes has already exceeded 3,000. Someone posted a screenshot of Baidu Baiki's entry on carbon monoxide poisoning in the comments, highlighting the key sentence, in an enclosed space, when the carbon monoxide concentration reaches 0.1%, a person will fall into a coma or even die within an hour, someone calculated in the replies. The tank was about 20 cubic meters, with 41 people each exhaling an average of 0.2 liters of carbon dioxide per minute, plus the existing industrial waste gas residue. Those who could walk out either had superpowers or barely breathed at all. Someone was more direct. If she had known what was going to happen and prepared a wet towel to cover her mouth and nose, she could have held out for a long time. Others were digging into Chin Wanga's past. Someone found a screenshot of her QQ from her freshman year of high school, which read, if I die one day, it will be because this damn class drove me to it. Someone posted her chat records from an anonymous social platform. The venomous language and intense hatred made many people gasp, but there were also those defending her. Do you have any conscience? Her child almost died, and you're still spreading rumors online. She's a 17-year-old girl. What bad intentions could she have? She's just unlucky. Support Wanga. Those who curse her will get their comeuppance sooner or later. As I read these comments, I silently marked every message defending Chin Wanga in my mind, not because I hold grudges, but because the logic of these people is exactly the same as those who pressed wet tissues against my face in my past life. They don't need evidence, they don't need the truth, they just need a good person to believe in and a bad person to hate, so they can comfortably stand on the moral high ground and fire at anything that doesn't align with their expectations. Overnight, Chin Wanga became the focus of the entire internet, not because of what she did, but because of what was done to her. At 2 in the morning, someone released a recording. The audio was only 30 seconds long, noisy, but a girl's voice could be clearly heard saying, Tang Shiyu, are you coming in? Come on, let's go together. Then another girl's voice replied, I won't go in. I have a bit of claustrophobia. Then the first girl's voice came again, with a clear tone of coaxing and pressure, it's the last time, won't you stay with me? The first voice was Chin Wanga, the second was mine, and the third was still Chin Wanga. Where did this recording come from? I don't know. There were 41 people present at the time, and anyone could have recorded it, but the timing of this recording was too perfect, right when everyone started to doubt, does this girl who stepped forward really have a problem? Below the recording, someone commented, hear that? She's pressuring the class monitor to go in. The class monitor said she wouldn't go in, and she kept persuading, it's the last time, stay with me, doesn't it sound like you have to come in? Someone replied, claustrophobia. She said she's afraid of the dark, and she still kept persuading. Is that kindness? Is that respect? Another person said, wait, when was this recording made? If it was before the accident, it means someone knew something would happen in advance. If it was during the accident, then she had the nerve to record it. the comments section completely exploded. I turned off my phone, lay in bed, and stared at the ceiling. There was a water stain on the ceiling, shaped like a butterfly with its wings spread. On the day I died under the locust tree in my past life, the sky was very blue, the clouds were very white, and there were butterflies flying. The last thing I saw in my field of vision was a few white butterflies weaving through the leaves, as if coming to take me away. In this life, how much longer do I have to wait before those butterflies truly come? I don't know. All I know is that it's not yet time for me to make my entrance. The climax of this drama isn't in the hospital, nor on the internet. It's on the exam grounds tomorrow, the college entrance exam, that magical existence that made 41 people willing to squeeze into an abandoned oxygen tank. That drove Qin Wanga to madness, ready to gamble everyone's future for destruction, that exam which, in the last life, no one took properly, in this life. It arrives right on schedule, at 7 a.m., on June 7th, I stood at the entrance of the exam venue, holding my admission ticket and a transparent file folder containing 2 black gel pens, 1 2B pencil, an eraser, and a ruler. The entrance was packed with people, test takers, parents, teachers, traffic police, volunteers, a jumble of colors and voices, like a pot of boiling porridge. Some were hugging, some high-fiving, some flipping through notes one last time, some crying, some telling their parents, go back, don't wait, some saying, Mom, don't be nervous, I'm not nervous, and some laughing until their eyes turned red. The college entrance exam, in a sense, it's the fairest contest in a Chinese child's life. It doesn't look at your face, your family background, or your connections. It only looks at what you write on those black and white test papers over these 2 days, and today. This contest has taken on a new meaning for most people at this venue, because 42 of their classmates were sent to the hospital yesterday afternoon. No, 41, plus Qin Wanga, that makes 41. At the entrance of the exam venue, someone had hung a banner that read, Blessings for Class 6, Grade 3, Qingbei High School, white characters on a black background, so simple it made you want to cry. Beneath the banner stood a row of students and parents, holding small candles. The candlelight flickered in the morning breeze. Like a cluster of faint, unyielding hopes, I walked past them without slowing my steps. Someone recognized me. Is that Tang Shiyu, the class monitor of Class 6? It is her. Wasn't she at the scene too? She's fine. I heard she didn't go into that tank and stayed outside. Did she call the police? I don't know. There's all sorts of things being said online. Voices chased after me from behind, like a fine breeze brushing against my back, sending a slight chill. I didn't turn around, nor did I quicken my pace. I just walked unhurriedly into the exam center's gate. The security check was quick. The metal detector swept over me once and let me through. I found my exam room at the end of the second-floor corridor, its window facing the school garden. The gardenias in the garden were in bloom, their white petals glowing softly in the morning light, and the fragrance drifted in through the window, as intense as a declaration. Summer had arrived. No matter what had happened, summer had still come. There were 30 seats in the exam room, 4 of them empty. The owners of those 4 empty seats were now lying in the hospital's ICU. They had spent 3 full years preparing for today, solving countless practice tests, memorizing countless classical texts, calculating countless function problems, and drawing countless maps. They had dedicated the best years of their youth to those black and white exam papers, hoping to exchange that knowledge and effort for a future in this very exam hall. But their futures had already been shattered, piece by piece, by Qin Wanga's knife. Inside that rusted tank, I sat down, placing my admission ticket and ID card at the corner of the desk, with my pencil case in front of me. The desk wobbled a bit, so I took a tissue from my pocket, folded it a few times, and wedged it under the leg. Now it was steady. The invigilator walked in, a middle-aged woman with glasses, her expression stern and her voice steady. Please place all items unrelated to the exam at the front of the classroom. Someone raised a hand. Teacher, can we turn on the fan? It's so hot. Wait for the broadcast announcement. Some were sighing, some were taking deep breaths, some were silently reciting formulas one last time, and some were staring blankly into space. I heard a low voice from the boy behind me. He was whispering to himself, it's okay, I can do this. I close my eyes. The exam paper hasn't been handed out yet, but the questions are already in my mind. In my past life, I ranked 3rd in the entire province, and I remember those questions clearly. Which lines of classical poetry would appear in the Chinese language section? which step in the math problems required constructing an auxiliary function, and what the first reading comprehension passage in the English test was about. I could even recite them backward, because in the year that followed, I went over those questions countless times, on every sleepless night, in every moment I woke up from a nightmare. But today, I don't need those memories, because I have a brand new weapon. Rebirth isn't about foreseeing the future or knowing the answers in advance. It's about a person who has lived 2 lifetimes possessing an understanding of exams that far surpasses what any 18-year-old could ever reach. The exam paper is handed out. I pick up my pen and write my name in the name column, Tang Shiyu. Then I lift my head and glance at the sky outside the window. The sky is blue, the clouds are white, and a few white butterflies are fluttering among the gardenias, exactly as I saw them before I died in my past life. I lower my head and begin answering the questions. The tip of the pen makes a faint scratching sound on the paper, like silkworms nibbling on mulberry leaves, or like time slipping away at lightning speed. Chinese language, multiple choice questions, reading comprehension, classical Chinese translation, and essay writing, crossing over. Again and again, the title of my essay was, Crossing Over Death. The first line read, "At 18, I died once." Not a metaphor, not a figure of speech, not any kind of literary exaggeration. It was a statement, one that only I could write, a statement belonging to someone who has died once. I wrote that jar into my essay, wrote the feeling of being suffocated by a wet tissue into my essay, wrote the tearful cries for help surging toward me in the darkness into my essay. I didn't mention anyone's name, didn't accuse anyone, didn't even write the 3 words, Qin Wanga. I was simply describing a feeling. The suffocation of being surrounded by the deepest malice in human nature. But at the end of that suffocation, I wrote, but in the moment I opened my eyes in the darkness, I suddenly understood. Not every death needs redemption. Some deaths are meant to let those who deserve to die live well. By the time I finished writing the essay, my eyes were a little wet, not from sadness, but from anger. An anger that had been burning for 2 lifetimes, never extinguished, fiercer than any flame. The morning exam ended. I walked out of the testing center, the sunlight blinding. The entrance was even more crowded than in the morning, a dense sea of heads and colorful umbrellas clogging the entire street. Some were crying, some were laughing, some were on the phone saying, "Mom, I think I did okay," and some were saying, "It's over, it's over." I changed the last multiple choice question 3 times. I didn't stop and walked straight to the milk tea shop across the street. As I pushed open the door, a wave of cold air rushed toward me, carrying the scent of milk and tea. There were only a few customers inside, someone scrolling through their phone with their head down, someone eating a simple meal, and someone checking exam answers, their expressions a mix of joy and disappointment. I sat down in a corner and ordered a cup of 4 Seasons spring tea, no sugar, with ice. My phone buzzed, a message from a WeChat group, the class group, the one with 42 people. Before yesterday, this group had hundreds of messages every day, from "What color uniform should we wear tomorrow?" to "Who has the answer to the last math problem?" As lively as a bustling market. But from last night until now, there were only 3 messages in the group. One from our homeroom teacher, Mr. Chen: "Classmates, please focus on preparing for the exam, we'll talk about everything else afterward." Another from the English class representative, Mr. Chen: "How are Zhou Ci and the others?" And the last one was from Qin Wanga, sent at 4:17 a.m. "Today, I'm still alive." No one replied below, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't dare. No one knew what to say. Should they congratulate her for being alive, or ask her why only she survived, or pretend nothing happened, using emojis and casual phrases to dissolve all the awkwardness and pain, just like before? I don't know. All I know is that when I saw those 4 words, a voice echoed in my mind. I'm still alive. She is still alive, of course she is. Someone who would drag 41 others down with her just to survive wants to live more than anyone else. Her will to live is so strong, so intense, that she is willing to trade others' lives for her own. I took a sip of the 4 Seasons spring tea, the cool liquid sliding down my throat with a faint bitterness. My phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a WeChat group message, but a text from an unfamiliar number. "Tang Shiyu, I'm Zhou Ci's mother. Can you come to the hospital? Zhou Ci has woken up." I stared at that text. For 10 seconds, Zhou Ci had woken up, in a carbon monoxide poisoning incident where irreversible brain damage could occur within just 40 minutes, while everyone else was still unconscious. He had woken up. I put down my phone, finished the rest of the Four Seasons spring tea in one gulp, the ice cubes clinking crisply at the bottom of the cup. Then I stood up, pushed open the door, and stepped into the June sunlight. 6th floor of the inpatient building at the First People's Hospital, Neurology Department. The air in the corridor was thick with the smell of disinfectant and some indescribable sweetness, as if someone had been boiling a pot of spoiled herbal medicine at the end of the hallway. The lights at the nurses' station were on, and a few nurses were murmuring to each other. When they saw me step out of the elevator, they glanced up briefly before looking back down. Josie's mother stood at the door of room 603, clutching a handkerchief, her eyes red and swollen as if she had cried all night. When she saw me, her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just nodded and stepped aside to let me through. I pushed the door open and entered. The room was very quiet, broken only by the beeping of the machines and Josie's uneven breathing. The curtain was half drawn, sunlight squeezing through the gap, casting a long, narrow beam of light across the white bedsheet. Josie lay on the hospital bed. Had he lost weight since yesterday? No, it wasn't weight loss, it was haggardness. That kind of haggardness wasn't a change in body mass, but a sense of decay seeping out from the bones, something no amount of nutrition could remedy. His face was ashen, his lips chapped, his eyes half open, his pupils moving slowly as if he were looking at something, yet nothing at all. He saw me. Those eyes, once so bright they could glow in the dark, were now murky like two lumps of glass glue about to solidify. But the moment they caught sight of me, a faint glimmer flickered within them, not a glimmer of love, but something more primal, more instinctual, fear. He was afraid of me, a man who had once hit me, scolded me, and chosen someone else every time he should have chosen me, now lay half dead in a hospital bed, his brain damaged yet still retaining enough capacity to fear me. It's ironic, but even more ironic is that I actually felt a flicker of satisfaction. Tang Shiyu. His voice was so faint that I had to lean in to hear him. I had a nightmare. What nightmare? I asked. I dreamed that I didn't hit you. His eyes moved, as if trying to recall something. No, I did hit you, and then you died. No, you didn't die. You watched me die. I was in the jar. You were outside. You watched me. He started coughing, violently, his whole body arching up from the bed as the monitor let out a piercing alarm. A nurse rushed in, pressed down on his shoulders, and put an oxygen mask on him. I stepped back and watched him, gasping for air. Behind the mask, those clouded eyes never leaving me, he was looking at me, he was afraid of me. I sat down in the chair beside the hospital bed, took out my phone from my pocket, opened the Notes app, typed a few words, and then turned the screen toward Josie. On the screen it read, "Do you regret it?" He stared at those 3 words, and a thin layer of mist formed inside the oxygen mask. It was his breath, his struggle to breathe, his search among those shattered memories for an answer, one that could allow him to forgive himself, or convince himself that there is no need to be forgiven. He closed his eyes, tears slid from the corners, tracing down his temples and into his hair. I really want to believe that this tear is real, but I've been deceived too many times in my past life. Josie, you need to rest. The nurse walked over and pulled me away from the hospital bed. Family members, please step outside first. The patient's condition is still unstable. I stood up, put my phone back in my pocket, and took one last look at Josie. His eyes were open again, still staring at me, still shedding tears, still filled with fear. I turned and walked out of the ward. In the hallway, Josie's mother stopped me, grabbing my arms with both hands, her nails digging into my skin, making me wince in pain. Tang Shiyu, tell Auntie, what exactly happened that day? Her voice trembled, her eyes brimming with tears. Josie, he keeps rambling, saying things like, she didn't come in, she didn't save us, she hates me. Who is he talking about? I looked at her. In my past life, it was this face that cursed me under the locust tree. Our Jotsi was so good to her, how could she bear to do this? In my past life, it was these hands that pressed those soaked tissues one by one onto my face. In my past life, it was this woman who stood by and watched as an 18-year-old girl was suffocated alive, without stopping it, without calling the police, without even looking away. But at this moment, she is still a mother whose son lies in a hospital bed, possibly never to recover. Should I sympathize with her? Yes, but I cannot, because once sympathy begins, it will surge like a flood, breaking through every dam, turning me back into the Tang Shiyu of my past life. Hesitating outside the jar, lingering before the phone to call the police, bending over backward to please everyone, and the Tang Shiyu of this life is no longer that kind of person, auntie. I gently pried her hand off my arm, my voice soft and calm. Once the police investigation results come out, you'll know the answer. After I said this, I turned and walked toward the elevator. Behind me came her suppressed sobs, like the low whimper of some animal trapped in a throat, echoing through the hospital corridor for a long time. The moment the elevator doors closed, I caught sight of another figure at the end of the corridor, Qin Wanga. She stood beside the nurse's station at the far end of the hallway, wearing a light blue hospital gown, her hair loose on her shoulders, her face still pale, but with no trace of illness in her eyes. The moment she saw me, her expression shifted, from pitiable to alert, from alert to cold, from cold to a naked hatred as sharp as a poisoned blade. She hates me, because she knows I tore up her perfect script, because she knows where the source of those online doubts about her lies, because she knows that the person standing outside the jar, who was supposed to take the blame for her, is now at the other end of this corridor, looking at her with an expression she has never seen before. That expression holds no hatred, no anger, no fear, no emotion, only one thing, judgment. She is the object of my judgment, she is the villain in my script, she is the supporting character in my story, and there is only ever one protagonist, me. The elevator doors slowly closed as she and I locked eyes. I leaned against the elevator wall, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. The elevator was descending, from the 6th floor to the 5th, to the 4th, to the 3rd, to the 2nd, to the 1st. The doors opened. I walked out, through the hospital lobby, through that long corridor, past the parents still waiting for news and the reporters' cameras still flashing, and out the hospital entrance. The sunlight hit me again, so hot it made you want to curse. I pulled out my phone and opened the news. There was a new push notification. Latest update on the carbon monoxide poisoning incident at the abandoned factory in the northern part of the city. Police have launched an investigation. Preliminary findings show that the tank's ventilation opening was deliberately blocked. The possibility of an accident has been ruled out, and the case is under further investigation. Ruled out the possibility of an accident. That means this is a criminal case, means someone will have to answer for it, means Qin Wanga's identity as an accidental victim is being stripped away piece by the evidence. I put my phone back in my pocket and walked slowly along the road. A small shop by the street was playing an old song, loud enough that the lyrics were hard to make out, but the melody was familiar. I had heard it one summer evening in my past life. Back then, I thought my future would be as bright, warm, and full of hope as that song. Now I know, the future doesn't brighten on its own. If you want light, you have to light the torch yourself, and my torch is already lit. It will burn Qin Wanga, burn Zhou Ci, burn all those hypocrites who wave the banner of kindness while committing acts of cruelty, burn everything that weighed down on me in my past life, invisible, heavy, suffocating. It will be hot, it will hurt, it will crackle and pop as it burns, like bones snapping in the fire, like truth bursting through lies, but it's worth it, because only in the ashes can something new grow. My steps came to a stop in front of a stationery store. In the window display were all kinds of pens and notebooks, and the most eye-catching spot held a pink fountain pen with a line of small characters engraved on the cap, a future worth waiting for. I pushed the door open and bought that pen, not because I liked pink, but because I was going to use it to write the ending of Qin Wanga's story, using the best pen to write the harshest words. That's who I am. After buying that pink fountain pen, I didn't return to the hotel, nor did I go to the hospital. Instead, I went somewhere else, the Qingnan police station. I had already waited an entire night and the whole morning, waiting for this very moment, the moment the police officially filed the case. If I had gone too early, the police wouldn't take a high school student's testimony seriously. If I had gone too late, public opinion would have taken shape before the truth emerged, and then everything I said would sound like jumping on the bandwagon. Now was the right time. The lobby of the police station was packed with people, those parents, the same ones who had been yelling at me at the hospital entrance last night, now all sitting here, holding numbered tags in their hands, with the same expression on their faces, one of hope and despair intertwined, the kind that breaks your heart just to look at it. Zhao Yuxuan's mother sat in the front row. Her hair had turned mostly gray overnight, and she looked like a tree struck by lightning, still standing on the outside, but already hollow inside. When she saw me walk in, her eyes flickered briefly. She didn't rush over like last night, but instead lowered her head and continued clutching that crumpled tissue in her hands. I sat down beside her. She didn't move away, a good sign, Auntie, I said, my voice so soft that only she could hear. I know you hate me. Her shoulders trembled, but I can tell you one thing. Zhao Yuxuan was the first one to go in, and he was the only one who asked me, is this tank safe, before entering. Zhao Yuxuan's mother jerked her head up, staring straight at me. He asked me, Monitor. This tank won't be a problem, right? I said, it should be fine. Wanga said she stayed inside it before. He smiled and said, all right, if Wanga says it's fine, then it's fine. Then he was the first to crawl in. This is true. This is something that had been weighing on my heart my entire past life, something I never said to anyone. Zhao Yuxuan did ask me before he went in. He trusted me because I was the class monitor, because I had good grades, because in everyone's eyes I was a reliable person, and he trusted Qin Wanga because Qin Wanga was my friend, because Qin Wanga was the one who was always smiling, always enthusiastic, always saying, everyone's happiness is true happiness. He traded his trust for death. Do you know why I didn't stop it back then? I looked into Zhao Yuxuan's mother's eyes, and finally the tears fell, not because of the performance in this life, but because of the heartfelt, soul-bearing truth I was showing everyone in this life. It wasn't because I didn't care, it was because I believed it too. This is the first true thing I've said in this life, not the kind of truth from my past life, but the kind from this life, straight from the heart, a truth that lays my soul bare for everyone to see. In my past life, Tang Shiyu hesitated outside the jar because she was afraid of being isolated, afraid of being blamed, afraid of losing everyone's affection. In this life, Tang Shiyu stood outside the jar and didn't stop it because she was calculating, waiting, using this disaster to complete her revenge. But Zhao Yuxuan's death was not part of my calculation. I thought everyone would just become a vegetable, like in my past life. I thought no one would die. I thought everyone would survive, even if it was in the most painful way possible. But Zhao Yuxuan died. He was suffocated inside that jar, a tall guy, 1.92 meters, built like an ox, but because he was the largest and the hardest to drag out of the crowd, he was the first to fall and the last to be found. By the time he was discovered, there was no sign of life left. What was going through his mind when he died? Was he thinking about tomorrow's college entrance exam, about the braised pork his mom made, about the girl he had a crush on for so long but never dared to confess to? Or was he thinking, didn't the class monitor say it was nothing? I don't know, I dare not know. I'm sorry, I said to Zhao Yuxuan's mother, my voice so low I could barely form a complete sentence. I'm sorry, Auntie, I'm sorry. She looked at me, tears streaming silently down her face. Then she reached out, not to slap me, but to hold my hand. Her hand was cold, rough, and covered in calluses, the hand of an ordinary working woman, the same hands that had raised Zhao Yuxuan from a tiny baby to a young man of 1.92 meters. Child, her voice was so hoarse it was almost inaudible. You are also a victim. I couldn't speak from crying, not because of being moved, but because of these words. In my previous life, no one had ever said to me, you are also a victim. In this life, finally, someone saw it. The lights in the interrogation room were white, so white it was blinding. I sat in a chair, facing two police officers, one male, one female, both very young. The male officer held a notebook, with a label on the cover that read, City North Middle School, 6/6 Special Case, the handwriting as neat as printed type. Tang Shiyu, please describe the situation in detail that day. I took a deep breath and began to speak. Starting from how Qin Wanga stopped me after school, to how she suggested going to the abandoned factory to inhale oxygen, to how she insisted everyone go inside, to how she grabbed my hand when I refused, saying she was afraid to be alone, to the slap Zhou Ci gave me, to the door being locked from the inside, to my departure. I recounted everything in detail, every word, every expression, spelled out clearly. The male police officer's pen flew across the paper, occasionally glancing up at me. His eyes held both sympathy and vigilance. He was judging whether my words were credible, an instinct of a policeman. You said. Qin Wanga turned back to look at you and smiled just before the jar door closed. The male officer spoke, his voice low. Can you describe that smile? Yes, I said. The curve of that smile was about 15 degrees. The corners of the mouth lifted only slightly, but the eyes didn't follow. It was a smile that existed only on the lips, not in the eyes. It was the kind of smile a person shows when they know they've done something wrong and are certain they won't be caught. The two officers exchanged a glance. Do you remember what the vents inside the tank looked like? The female police officer asked. Yes, the vents were located in the middle section of the tank's interior, one on each side, about 3 centimeters in diameter. The substance blocking the vents wasn't dust. It was some kind of fabric. Preliminary assessment suggests it was part of a school uniform. How do you know it was part of a school uniform? Because I recognized the material of the uniform. The two police officers exchanged another glance. The interrogation that day lasted 3 hours. I said everything I could, except for 2 things. First, I didn't call the police. What I said was, I tried to call the police, but my phone was dead. By the time I charged it, I could already hear the ambulance. Second, I knew that Qin Wang did it on purpose. What I said was, looking back now, I think her behavior was a bit strange, but I didn't realize it at the time. Both statements were lies, but they were unfalsifiable lies. No one could prove whether my phone was out of battery at the time, nor could anyone prove whether I had noticed Qin Wang's abnormality at that moment. On the edge of the law, this kind of unfalsifiability is the best cover. When the interrogation ended, the male police officer saw me out. He hesitated for a moment, then still spoke up. Tang Shiyu, you have an exam tomorrow. Do your best. Thank you, I said. By the time I walked out of the police station, it was almost dark. In June, night falls late, and a streak of orange-red sunset still hung at the edge of the sky, like a torn bag burning against the gray horizon. The air carried a scent unique to dusk, the dry, slightly bitter smell released by the ground as it dissipated the heat accumulated during the day. I stood on the steps of the police station and took a deep breath. Tomorrow is the last day of exams, English and the comprehensive science test. In my previous life, I scored 289 on the comprehensive science test and 146 on English, totaling 435, adding Chinese and math. My overall score was 678, ranking 3rd in the province. In this life, I aim to score even higher, not because I need to prove anything, but because I want to use this transcript as the final straw to crush Qin Wang. You want to ruin everyone's college entrance exam. You want everyone to fail. You want everyone to become as pathetic as you. But I won't let you. I will achieve a score you can never reach. I will stand at a height you can never attain, and I will make you see, among all the people you tried so hard to destroy, there is one you can never break. The second day of the college entrance exam, at 7:30 in the morning, when I walked into the exam hall, I noticed 2 more empty seats than yesterday. Yesterday there were 4, today there are 6, that means 2 more people were unable to continue the exam due to their physical condition. Perhaps their illness worsened, perhaps they haven't regained consciousness, or perhaps they have recovered but their brains can no longer process those complex questions. 6 empty seats, 6 silent mouths, whispering something in the examination hall. I sat down, arranged my admission ticket and ID card, and placed my pencil case in front of me. The invigilator was still the same middle-aged woman with glasses from yesterday, her expression even more serious than before. And as her eyes swept over those empty seats, her lips pressed together slightly. Please place all items unrelated to the exam at the front of the classroom. The broadcast sounded, the test papers were handed out. English, listening comprehension, reading comprehension, closed test, grammar fill-in, error correction, essay. I worked through each question one by one, my pen racing across the paper like a sharp knife slicing through soft butter. Those words, those grammar rules, those traps and tricks in the reading comprehension, they were all as clear as transparent glass to me. I could see where they had set up obstacles, where they had laid the groundwork, where they were waiting for students to make mistakes, and I, someone who had lived 2 lifetimes, would not make those mistakes again. The essay topic was an unforgettable experience. I wrote about the moment the rescue team cut open the tank door, but I didn't write about how scared I was, didn't write about how pitiful my classmates were, didn't write anything sentimental. I wrote about the light, when that heavy iron door was sliced open by the cutting tools, the way the light poured in from outside. It was the most beautiful light I had ever seen, not because it was golden, not because it was warm, but because in that beam of light, I saw the meaning of being alive, not just living itself, but what you do after you live, using your eyes to see clearly what lies hidden in the places the light hasn't reached. When I wrote this passage on the English answer sheet, my fingers trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but because this passage contained a secret code only I could understand. That beam of light, the light that shone in when the rescue team cut open the tank door, and the rescue team was summoned by me using a virtual number. I am my own light, and also someone else's. Afternoon comprehensive science, physics, chemistry, Biology, multiple choice questions, experimental questions, calculation. Questions, comprehensive questions. The gas composition analysis inside that tank was a perfect chemistry problem. Oxygen concentration 31%, nitrogen 68%, carbon dioxide 0.5%, the rest industrial impurity volatiles. If anyone asks why I remember it so clearly, I would say, because I checked the rescue report, but in reality, I remember because these numbers are etched into my bones. 0.5% carbon dioxide is enough to cause a healthy adult to lose consciousness within 40 minutes, and when 41 people breathe simultaneously, the rate of oxygen depletion accelerates by at least 3 times, so those children started screaming at 15 minutes, fell silent by the 30th minute, and at the 40th minute, Zhao Yuxuan's heart stopped beating. I calculated these numbers into the thermodynamics of the physics problems, wrote those symptoms into the neural regulation mechanisms of the biology questions, and turned the entire event into a perfect comprehensive science answer sheet, neat handwriting, clear logic, every step of derivation supported by evidence. When I handed in the paper, the proctor picked up my answer sheet, glanced at it, and paused. She probably rarely saw anyone write like this on a comprehensive science answer sheet, because most people were racing against time, their handwriting so messy that only they could read it, but my handwriting was as neat as print, every step of each problem clearly laid out, even the rough work done on scratch paper, leaving the answer sheet spotless. This is the respect I give to this exam, and the respect I give to myself. The moment I walked out of the exam hall, the sunlight was blinding, the noise at the entrance of the test center was like a pot of boiling porridge. Some people were screaming, some were hugging, some were tossing their admission tickets into the air, and some were crying. A boy was sobbing in his mother's arms, shouting, "Mom, I'm done, I'm done," crying like a 3-year-old child. Standing in the middle of the crowd, I felt the sounds and scents surging from all directions, and suddenly I had a strange illusion, as if nothing had ever happened, as if that jar didn't exist, as if those 41 people weren't injured, as if Qin Wanga had never smiled, as if Zhou Xi had never hit me, as if I had never died, as if I were still just an ordinary high school senior who had finished the exam and could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But the next second, my phone vibrated, pulling me back to reality. It was the class group chat. Someone had posted a photo. In the photo was Qin Wanga's hospital bed. The sheets were white, the pillow was white, and Qin Wanga's face was white too. Her eyes were closed, she had an oxygen mask on, and an IV drip in her wrist. She looked like a flower on the verge of withering. The caption below the photo read, "Wanga says she's sorry to everyone, she didn't know it would turn out like this, and she's willing to trade her own life for everyone else's." When I saw this message, I laughed, not a bitter laugh, not a sneer, but a genuine, heartfelt, joyful laugh, because she was panicking. Qin Wanga was panicking. If she were still the Qin Wanga who had everything under control, she wouldn't have sent a photo like this, wouldn't have said words like these, because these words are too fake, so fake that anyone with a shred of common sense wouldn't believe them. But she sent it, she said it, which means she's been backed into a corner, no longer able to maintain those carefully crafted scripts, and has resorted to the most primitive, crudest, and lowest way to win sympathy, like someone struggling in deep water. The more they thrash, the faster they sink. I didn't reply to that message, I just took a screenshot and saved it. At 7 p.m., I returned to the hotel, took a shower, sat by the window, and began to sort out the remaining pieces on the chessboard. 1. The police investigation has been filed. Next, they will question everyone who can speak, retrieve surveillance footage from around the factory, test the residue on the vents, and reconstruct everything that happened inside that tank. Qin Wanga can lie, but the surveillance footage won't, the test results won't, and those fragmented but deadly pieces of physical evidence won't. 2. The media. The provincial TV report is just the beginning. Tomorrow, more media outlets will follow up, more details will be exposed, and more people will start asking, how did a 17-year-old girl manage to stand alone while 41 people were unconscious? Did she know something in advance? Was it intentional? 3. The parents. Zhao Yuxuan's mother has already started to suspect. She is not alone. Behind her is the fury of 39 families. Once this anger finds the right direction, it will be more terrifying than any flood or beast. They will investigate. They will ask questions. They will hire lawyers. They will petition. They will do anything that makes them feel they are seeking justice for their children. And when they discover that Qin Wanga is the real culprit, Their rage will erupt like a volcano, burning Qin Wanga to ashes. For, Zhou Ci, he's awake, and his memory is returning. He can prove that the door was locked from the inside, and he can prove that the person who locked it was himself. No, he won't admit that. He will shift all the blame onto Qin Wanga. She told me to lock the door. She said it was to keep the wind from blowing it open. I didn't know she would do this. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that his testimony will become another straw that breaks Qin Wanga's back. 5. Myself. I am the biggest variable, and also the biggest killer move, because only I know what that smile meant when Qin Wanga turned back to look at me just before the tank door closed. Only I know what it means that she never lost consciousness inside the tank. Only I know that when she took my hand that afternoon and said, "Tang Shiyu, let's do it together," what flashed in her eyes was not kindness, not warmth, not any positive emotion. It was murderous intent, a cold, precise, scalpel-sharp murderous intent. She wanted to lock me in, she wanted me dead, just because I didn't blindly trust her like everyone else, just because I left a small crack in her perfect script, just because I made her feel unsafe. Anyone who makes her feel unsafe doesn't deserve to live. That's Qin Wanga. That's the Qin Wanga everyone likes, the kind, warm, helpful Qin Wanga. The day the truth surfaced came faster than I had imagined. 3 days after the college entrance exam ended, the police held a press conference. The briefing was brief, but every point exploded like a bomb over the entire city. First, it has been confirmed that the tank's ventilation opening was deliberately blocked. The blockage material was fabric from a school uniform of Qingbei Middle School, and the DNA extracted from the fabric matches Qin Wanga. Second, it has been confirmed that the tank door was locked from the inside at the time of the incident. The locking method involved an iron door bolt reinforced with iron wire, and the fingerprints extracted from the iron wire matched Zhou Ci. Third, it has been confirmed that Qin Wanga visited the abandoned factory alone 3 days before the incident, and surveillance cameras around the factory captured her entering and exiting. Fourth, it has been confirmed that Qin Wanga's phone searched for keywords such as symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning and time to hypoxia in enclosed spaces 1 day before the incident. Fifth, it has been confirmed that on the morning of the incident, Qin Wanga went to the school clinic, claiming chest tightness, and obtained a portable oxygen respirator, which was not found after the incident. At the end of the press conference, the journalists' seats were dead silent. Then, like a stirred-up wasp's nest, everyone spoke at once. Some gasped, some let out sharp breaths. Others slammed their pens on the table, swore, made phone calls, or directly opened their laptops to start writing. I sat in front of the TV in my hotel room, watching it all unfold, holding a cup of Four Seasons spring tea, no sugar, with ice. The tea had gone cold, the ice had long since melted, but I didn't move, because I was waiting for the next message. The message came quickly, just half an hour after the press conference ended. Qin Wanga's mother was cornered by reporters in the hospital corridor. She didn't cry as pitifully as before, but instead shoved the camera and shouted, "Stop filming, stop filming." Her voice was sharp and frantic, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. A reporter asked her, "Ms. Qin, what is your response to the police's statement?" She replied, "My daughter has been wronged. Those things were all planted by someone else. That piece of school uniform fabric, who knows if it was deliberately placed there? Those search records, who knows if someone used her phone to look them up?" Another reporter asked, "Then how do you explain the surveillance footage showing your daughter going to the factory alone?" She paused for 3 seconds, then said something that nearly made me spit out my tea. "She went to the factory because she needed to study there. It was quiet there, before the college entrance exam. She went to a quiet place to study. Isn't that normal, studying in an abandoned factory filled with industrial fumes, broken glass, and rusty nails?" An excuse that wouldn't fool even a primary school student. Yet when it came out of Qin Wanga's mother's mouth, she said it with utter conviction. She truly believed her daughter was innocent, or rather, she had to make herself believe it, otherwise she would have to face the truth. The daughter she had raised for 18 years was a would-be murderer. This is crueler than any punishment, because from today onward, Qin Wanga's mother will live forever in the doubt of, did my daughter really do those things? Unable to fully believe her, yet unable to completely deny it either, this lingering agony will grip her throat like an invisible hand, day and night, suffocating her, and Qin Wanga couldn't even protect her own mother. This is the fruit of the karma she herself sowed. The day the college entrance exam results were released was June 23 at midnight. when the score inquiry channel opened, I sat in front of the computer in my hotel room, entered my exam registration number and ID number, and clicked search. The page loaded for 3 seconds, then a row of numbers appeared on the screen: Chinese 142, Math 150, English 148, Science Comprehensive 294, total score 734, provincial ranking, first. I stared at that, first, for a long time, top of the province. In my previous life, I was third in the province. In this life, I'm first. The extra 56 points weren't because my knowledge was more solid, but because my understanding of being alive had deepened. Someone who has died once knows better than anyone what truly matters and what doesn't, what the real priorities are and what noise should be thrown into the trash. I picked up my phone, took a screenshot, and sent it to the class group chat. No caption, just the screenshot. The silence in the group lasted about 10 seconds, then it exploded. Holy crap, 734, top of the province, class monitor, are you even human? Oh my god, what kind of god-tier score is this? Class monitor, I love you, class monitor. Did you cheat or something? I scrolled through those messages one by one, a slight curve forming at the corners of my mouth. Then I tapped on Qin Wanga's profile picture, a white gardenia flower, with a signature that read, "Life is as splendid as a summer bloom." I stared at that line for a few seconds before opening her moments. The latest post was from 5 minutes ago. I knew it. Some people put on a pitiful act in front of others, but behind the scenes, they're more smug than anyone. So what if you ace the college entrance exam? When the heart is rotten, nothing else matters. No image, no location, no extra embellishments, but these few words said more than any lengthy essay could. Who was she talking about? Everyone knew, because in the entire class group chat, I was the only one who had posted a screenshot of my scores, the only one who was smug, and her "some people put on a pitiful act in front of others" was a hint that I was playing the victim. She was fighting back. When everyone was questioning her, accusing her, spurning her, she still had the strength to fight back. I put down my phone, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the butterfly-shaped water stain on the ceiling. The butterfly was still the same butterfly, but the sky outside had completely changed, from dusk to night, from night to dawn, from dawn to noon. Time was passing, the world was changing, and here in this small hotel room, I had completed my transformation from a victim to a victor. No, not a victor, but someone on the path to victory. Victory had not yet arrived, because Qin Wanga had not yet confessed, had not yet been sentenced, had not yet spent the time she deserved in the place she deserved to be. But soon, very soon, at the end of June, the police officially filed a case against Qin Wanga on suspicion of intentional homicide, not for negligent homicide, not for endangering public safety, not for any charge that could lead to a lighter sentence, but for intentional homicide, because the chain of evidence had been completed to an irrefutable degree: premeditated reconnaissance, keyword searches, obtaining an oxygen respirator, blocking ventilation openings, inducing others to lock the tank door, and making false statements afterward. Every link was supported by evidence, and every action pointed to a clear intent. She wanted the people inside the tank to die, and she did not mind their deaths. Under the law, this subjective state of mind, knowing that one's actions may cause the death of others, yet still allowing that outcome to occur, is called indirect intent. The indirect intent of intentional homicide, Article 232 of the criminal law. Qin Wanga was arrested on June 29. I went to the scene, not because I wanted to see her humiliation, but because I needed to confirm that she was truly caught. The memory of her getting away with it in my past life had been like a thorn lodged in my heart for too long. I needed to see that thorn pulled out with my own eyes. The police car stopped at the hospital entrance. 2 female officers came out of the inpatient building, escorting a girl in a hospital gown. Qin Wanga, her hair had been cut short, unevenly, as if hacked off with a dull pair of scissors. Her face was completely expressionless, not the kind of carefully crafted pitiful look, but a genuine emptiness that seeped from the bone, like someone who had walked too long in the desert and finally reached the end, only to find nothing there. Her eyes swept across the crowd, as if searching for something, and then she saw me. I was standing by the flower bed at the hospital entrance, wearing a white dress, my hair loose over my shoulders, holding a cup of 4 Seasons spring tea, no sugar, with ice. Our eyes met in the air. Her eyes turned red in an instant, her lips trembling violently, her whole body as if struck by lightning. She even went weak in the knees. the two female police officers pressed down on her shoulders simultaneously. She didn't struggle, but her lips were moving. She was saying something. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but I read her lips. 3 words. Just you wait. The moment Qin Wanga was escorted into the police car, a sudden burst of sobbing erupted from the crowd. It was Zhao Yuxuan's mother. She rushed forward, threw herself against the car window, pounding the glass with her fists and wailing, "Give me back my son, give me back my son, give me back my son." Her voice grew louder and more torn with each repetition, until it was no longer recognizable as speech but as a howl. Her voice was like a rusty saw, cutting into the hearts of everyone present. Stroke by stroke, I stood there, watching her. Watching the police car, watching Qin Wanga's blank, twisted face behind the window. My tears finally fell, not out of sorrow, but out of relief, a slow, thorough relief seeping out from the marrow of my bones. In my past life, when I was suffocated under the locust tree, Qin Wanga was crying. She was crying for her perfect finale, crying for her victory, crying because she had finally made everyone pay. But in this life, I stood in the sunlight, watching Qin Wanga being escorted into the police car, watching Zhao Yuxuan's mother weep for her dead son, watching everything move in the right direction. This is justice, justice that arrived 2 lifetimes too late, but it finally came. In July, Qin Wanga's case entered the trial phase. Because it involved a minor, the trial was not open to the public. However, news still leaked through various channels. Qin Wanga refused to plead guilty in court, insisting that she didn't know, didn't expect it, and didn't do it on purpose. Her lawyer applied for a lighter sentence on the grounds that she was a minor suffering from depression, but the evidence presented by the prosecution was too solid. Phone search records, surveillance footage, DNA comparison results, witness testimonies, each piece was like a brick, stacked one by one, eventually building an insurmountable wall. Qin Wanga's mother collapsed in tears outside the courtroom and was taken away by an ambulance. Qin Wanga's father remained expressionless throughout, sitting motionless in the gallery like a stone statue. The media captured a photo of him, and someone commented, "There's nothing in this man's eyes, he looks like a hollowed-out shell." And indeed, he was hollowed out, not because his daughter had done something terrible, but because he suddenly realized he didn't know her at all, that girl who would act spoiled with him every day, ask him for pocket money, and say, "Daddy, I love you the most." The girl he believed was the kindest, purest, and most wonderful person in the world, had turned out to be someone capable of causing 41 people to die. Her faith in life completely collapsed in that moment. In mid-August, the verdict was handed down. Qin Wanga was convicted of intentional homicide and sentenced to 15 years in prison, not life imprisonment, not the death penalty, but 15 years, because her depression diagnosis report played a role, because she was still under 18, and because her lawyer, in his final statement, tearfully said, "She is still a child." 15 years later, she will be 32, released from prison at 32, starting over, but Zhao Yuxuan will forever remain 18, and as for the other children, some will forever remain in a vegetative state, some will forever be confined to a wheelchair, and some will forever have the mind of an infant. 15 years of prison time in exchange for the futures of 41 people. Is that fair? No, it's not, but that's the law. The law isn't meant to make you feel fair. It's meant to keep society running. It has its own logic, its own rules, its own boundaries. Within those boundaries, Qin Wanga received the punishment she deserved, not the kind we wanted, but at least it's something. I won't dwell on whether these 15 years are enough, because I've already gotten what I wanted. The moment the truth was laid bare for all to see, the moment Qin Wanga wept amid the ruins of the persona she had so carefully crafted, the moment everyone finally saw her true face, my revenge was already complete. The remaining 15 years are what she owes those children, not what she owes me. Zhou Ci's fate is even more ironic than Qin Wanga's. The damage to his brain is moderate, not the worst, but certainly impossible to fully recover from. He can talk, he can walk, he can eat and use the bathroom on his own, but his memory has suffered a permanent gap. He knows his name is Zhou Ci, knows where his home is, knows who his parents are, but he doesn't remember any chemical formulas, any English words, or any classical texts. All the knowledge he once prided himself on has been devoured by that tank. He repeated a year of school and ended up at a vocational college, not because he couldn't get into a better school, but because he could no longer learn anything complex. His brain was like a piece of wood that had been struck hard, still intact on the surface, but riddled with holes inside. so that any new knowledge placed in it would leak out through those holes, leaving nothing behind. The last time I saw Zhou Ci was on the night before college started. He came to find me, standing by the streetlight downstairs from my apartment, wearing a white t-shirt and a pair of dark blue sweatpants, looking much the same as before, but when I got closer, I saw something in his eyes, not the old confidence and gentleness, but a deep, undeniable emptiness. Tang Shiyu, he called my name, his voice trembling. I want to say sorry to you. I looked at him without saying a word. I shouldn't have hit you that day. His eyes reddened. I shouldn't have locked that door either. I didn't know it would turn out like that. I really didn't know. I thought everything she said was true. I thought that Tank was safe. I just wanted to make everyone a little happier. Just wanted to make everyone a little happier. That was his excuse. To make everyone a little happier. He hit his girlfriend. To make everyone a little happier. He locked 41 people inside a sealed tank. To make everyone a little happier, he personally buried his own and everyone else's future in a grave. Are you done? I asked. He was stunned. Now that I've said everything I needed to say, I'm going back. I turned around, and he called out to me from behind, his voice choked with tears. Can you forgive me? I didn't stop walking, and I didn't look back. The moment the door closed behind me, I heard Zhou Ci's cry, not a soft sob, not a suppressed whimper, but a complete, desperate, animal-like wail. There was no pretense in that sound, no performance, only one thing, a true, bone-deep, irredeemable regret. He was regretting it, regretting the slap, regretting locking that door, regretting trusting that person, regretting that when I needed him most by my side, he chose to stand against everyone else. But his regret came far too late, more than 2 lifetimes too late. On the first day of university, I dragged my suitcase alone through the gates of Tsinghua. Not much luggage, just one suitcase, a backpack, and a cup of 4-season spring tea in my hand. No sugar, with ice. The campus was packed with people, freshmen hauling luggage, volunteers holding signs, parents busy taking photos, and returning students weaving through the crowd on bicycles. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the plane tree leaves, casting patches of golden light like scattered fragments on the ground. I stood in line for freshman registration. The girl in front of me turned around, glanced at me, and smiled. You're a freshman too. Which department? Biomedical engineering. Wow, that's impressive. I'm from the Chinese department. My name is Lin Wan. Tang Shiyu. We shook hands. Her hand was warm, her smile genuine, completely different from the carefully crafted smile of Qin Wanga. At that moment, many memories suddenly flooded back. The white butterflies I saw when I was suffocated in my past life. The sound of ambulances from afar while waiting outside the tank in this life. The satisfaction flickering in Qin Wanga's eyes when Zhou Ci slapped me, the simple, honest smile on Zhao Yuxuan's face when he asked me before going in, class monitor, this tank won't have any problems, right? The rusted tank, the door bolt, the wire, the blocked vents, the brains consumed by carbon monoxide, the wet tissues, layer after layer pressed against my face, cool at first, then turning hot, stifling, no longer enough to breathe, and finally that light. Not the light from the rescue team, but something farther away, brighter than. I lifted my head, looked at the vast blue sky above Tsinghua Garden, and smiled. This time, I survived, not by luck, not by chance, but because I saved myself. No one will come to save you, no one should have to save you, you must become the one who saves yourself. This is the most precious lesson I've learned, earned over 2 lifetimes. My phone buzzed, a message from the class group chat. Someone had posted a photo, the last one taken of Qin Wanga by the media before she was imprisoned. She was wearing an orange prison uniform, her hair shaved into a crew cut, her face utterly expressionless, her eyes staring toward the camera, but with no focus in her pupils. Below the photo, someone typed a line, I heard she cries every day inside, saying she's been wronged, her depression is getting worse, and she started having hallucinations. She keeps saying there are people in the jar calling out to her, saying they want to drag her to die with them. I looked at those words, a faint smile curling at the corner of my mouth. She didn't have nightmares when she was in the jar, because she was the nightmare itself, but now that she's finally locked up, finally lost all her audience, finally unable to perform anymore, the nightmare has come. It comes from her own mind, from her conscience, from the traces left in her subconscious by the people she's hurt. She can deceive the whole world, but she can't deceive her own dreams. In those dreams, Zhao Yuxuan stands before her, his towering 192-meter frame, grinning foolishly as he asks, Wanga, didn't you say everything was fine? In those dreams, 41 people speak at once, their voices hollow, rising as if from deep water, saying, Chin Wanga, didn't you want to supplement your brain? Come on, let's do it together. And this is her true punishment. Not 15 years, not the high prison walls, not the iron bars and chains. It's every sleepless night, every moment of waking from a nightmare, every second of those voices echoing in her ears. She will carry those voices with her for all the days she has left. And I will carry all my scars and victories, and live my own. I turned off my phone, picked up the cup of Four Seasons spring tea, and took a sip. The tea had gone cold, the ice had long melted, but the flavor remained, bitter, fragrant, with a faint hint of sweetness. Just like life, I tossed the cup into the trash bin, dragged my suitcase, and walked into the dappled light and shadow beneath the plane trees. The sunlight was beautiful, the breeze was gentle, the future was long, and finally, I could live properly, truly, without any burdens, for once. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.